Lila was an ambitious senior in high school, known for her charm and confidence. With her captivating green eyes and a knack for drawing attention, she had always managed to get what she wanted. What she wanted now was Mr. Holden, her literature teacher. Mr. Holden had a magnetic presence. His deep voice commanded attention, and his passion for literature made every lesson feel like an intimate performance. Lila admired his intellect and sophistication. But it wasn't just admiration, it was an obsession. She watched him closely, noting every subtle gesture, every fleeting smile. Mr. Holden was married to Clara, a woman of quiet elegance who had been his anchor through years of financial struggles and career uncertainty. Clara was devoted to him, but their relationship had grown distant. He was too consumed by his work, and she was busy managing their home. Lila saw this distance as an opportunity. Her plan started subtly. She lingered after class, asking for help with assignments that didn't really need clarification. She'd compliment him on his tie or his handwriting, always finding small ways to make him notice her. "You're such an inspiring teacher." "Mr. Holden," she said one day, her voice soft. "It's rare to meet someone who truly loves what they do." He smiled, slightly flustered. "Thank you, Lila. That's kind of you to say." The first crack in his resolve appeared when Lila wrote an essay about unspoken desires, framing it as a reflection on classic literature. As he read it, he couldn't ignore the personal undertones. Her words felt directed at him, and though he knew better, he found himself thinking about her more than he should. One afternoon, Lila stayed late after class under the pretense of finishing a group project. When the other students left, she leaned on his desk, her proximity unnerving him. "You work so hard, Mr. Holden," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Do you ever feel unappreciated?" He looked up, caught off guard. "I suppose everyone feels that way sometimes." "You shouldn't. You deserve to feel special," she said, her gaze lingering on him. He cleared his throat, stepping back, but the seed had been planted. Over the next few weeks, Lila escalated her efforts. She started wearing dresses that flattered her figure and brushed his arm whenever they crossed paths. She'd send emails late at night, asking for feedback on her writing, peppered with personal compliments. One evening, after an after-school poetry club meeting, she stayed behind. The classroom was dimly lit, and the quiet made the air feel heavier. "You've changed my life, Mr. Holden," she said suddenly. "Lila, he started, but she cut him off. "No, let me finish. You've shown me what passion looks like. Not just for literature, but for life. I've never felt this way about anyone before." He should have stopped her, but instead he found himself drawn into her world. A brief touch turned into a lingering glance, and before he knew it, the line between teacher and student had blurred. Clara, however, wasn't oblivious. She had noticed the changes in her husband, the way he smiled at his phone, the sudden extra hours at school, the emotional distance. She didn't say anything at first, hoping it was just a phase. But when she found a small note in his pocket, clearly written by someone young and female, her suspicions solidified. Clara began investigating quietly. She checked his phone when he left it unattended and found a series of emails from Lila, filled with poetic flattery and subtle insinuations. One line struck her the hardest. "I can't stop thinking about you. You make me feel alive." Clara didn't confront him immediately. She wanted to be sure. She followed him to school one evening, parking discreetly. Through the classroom window, she saw him sitting too close to Lila, their body language speaking volumes. Instead of storming in, Clara decided on a calculated approach. She began gathering evidence, taking photos of their interactions and printing the emails she had found. Once she had enough, she went to Lila directly. Clara intercepted Lila one afternoon in the parking lot. She stepped out of her car, her demeanour calm but her eyes steely. "Lila!" she called out. Lila turned, startled to see Clara. "Mrs. Holden? What are you doing here?" "I think you know," Clara said, holding up a folder. "We need to talk." They moved to a quiet corner, where Clara laid everything out. "You're young, but you've made a very adult decision to interfere in someone's marriage. You may think this is some romantic game, but it's not. You've destroyed trust, damaged lives, and you will face consequences." Lila tried to argue, but Clara's calm intensity silenced her. "I have enough evidence to ruin your future, Lila," Clara continued. You'll lose any chance at scholarships. Your reputation will be in tatters, and your family will know exactly what you've done. Tears welled in Lila's eyes. I didn't mean to. Save your excuses, Clara snapped. You will never contact my husband again. If you do, I won't hold back. Terrified and humiliated, Lila agreed. She avoided Mr. Holden from then on. Ashamed and frightened by how far she had let things go, Clara didn't stop there. She confronted her husband with the evidence, demanding accountability. Mr. Holden broke down, admitting his guilt and begging for forgiveness. Clara made it clear that forgiveness would come with conditions, therapy, honesty, and a complete recommitment to their marriage. For Lila, the experience left a scar. She became more introspective, realizing the gravity of her actions and the pain she had caused. She graduated and left town, carrying the weight of her choices with her. Clara, meanwhile, rebuilt her life with Mr. Holden, but not without setting firm boundaries. Their marriage was never the same, but it became a testament to the strength it takes to face betrayal and find a path forward. Clara's confrontation with Lila marked a turning point for everyone involved. But the story didn't end there. Clara wasn't someone who believed in sweeping problems under the rug. After ensuring Lila stayed away from her husband, she turned her focus back to Mr. Holden. I've given you everything. Ethan, Clara said that evening, her voice steady but filled with restrained emotion. And this is how you repay me? By throwing away our life for a schoolgirl's infatuation? Ethan sat on the edge of their couch, his head in his hands. I know I've hurt you, Clara. I don't even have an excuse. I let myself get caught up in something that never should have happened. But please, I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Clara stared at him for a long moment, her anger tempered by a deep sadness. You don't just get to say sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. You've broken something in me, in us, and I don't know if it can be repaired. Ethan nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. I'll prove to you that I'm worth forgiving. If it takes the rest of my life, I'll earn back your trust. True to his word, Ethan began taking steps to repair the damage. He confessed his actions to the school board, risking his career, but wanting to show Clara he was willing to take responsibility. Though the board didn't terminate him, they placed him on probation and required him to attend counselling. Clara wasn't satisfied with just words and promises. She insisted on couples therapy, not to save the marriage, but to understand if there was anything left to salvage. Their sessions were raw and uncomfortable, filled with tears, accusations, and painful revelations. At first, Clara went through the motions, unsure if she even wanted to save the relationship. But as the weeks turned into months, she began to see glimpses of the man she had married, the man who had once been her best friend, her confidant. Meanwhile, Lila's life took a drastic turn. Rumours about her and Mr. Holden began circulating among her classmates. Though no one had concrete proof, the whispers were enough to isolate her. She withdrew from social activities, her once bright confidence replaced with a quiet shame. Lila's parents eventually learned the truth after finding Clara's folder hidden in her room. The confrontation at home was explosive, filled with accusations and disappointment. Her parents sent her to a therapist, hoping to help her understand the gravity of her actions and the pain she had caused. Over time, Lila began to reflect on her choices. She realised that her pursuit of Mr. Holden had less to do with love and more to do with a desire for validation and control. It was a bitter lesson, but one she would carry with her as she moved forward. As for Clara, she didn't forgive Ethan overnight. Forgiveness, she realised, wasn't about forgetting the betrayal, but about choosing not to let it define her. She began focusing on her own happiness, picking up hobbies, reconnecting with friends, and even considering a career of her own. Ethan, for his part, worked tirelessly to prove his commitment. He became more present, more attentive, and more transparent. Slowly, Clara began to see that he truly regretted his actions and was willing to change. 1 year after the affair, Clara and Ethan stood in their living room, looking through old photo albums. The pictures told the story of a life they had built together, a life worth fighting for. I can't promise I'll ever forget what happened, Clara said softly, but I'm willing to try to move forward, for us. Ethan nodded, his voice choked with emotion. Thank you. I'll never take this second chance for granted. Their relationship wasn't perfect, But it was honest, a fragile but growing bond rebuilt on the foundations of hard truths and unwavering determination. As for Lila, she graduated and moved to another city for college, determined to leave her past behind. The experience had changed her, teaching her painful but necessary lessons about boundaries, respect, and the consequences of her actions. In the end, everyone involved was left with scars, but those scars became reminders of growth, resilience, and the power of confronting one's mistakes. Though their paths diverged, each of them carried the lessons of that fateful year, forever altered by choices that could never be undone.